President Ramaphosa delivered the opening address to the National Dialogue on day one of the convention being held at the UNISA Auditorium in Pretoria. Now, Ramaphosa emphasized the purpose of the upcoming dialogue and said it would serve as an opportunity to have difficult conversations about the issues that we face. A collective of civil society groups say they will provide an oversight function to ensure that the dialogue is people-centered and does not drift toward a government stance. Let's get some perspective now from Abahlali baseMjondolo President Zikode. Good morning. Sbu, thank you so much for your time.
A very good morning to you, Mr. Chaba, and to all your viewers at home. Thank you for having us.
Firstly, as Abahlali baseMjondolo, do you see a need for a national dialogue?
Well, to be honest, we did not see a need for a national dialogue, just simply because South Africans have for far too long been dialoguing amongst ourselves, and there has been nobody that was prepared to listen. So we are caught by surprise that all of a sudden government wants to hear, and we ask ourselves, what is it that we haven't said in the past 30 years that we got to say at this point in time?
So given the joint statement then that was released, and in light of what you've just mentioned, what specific demands are you tabling regarding the national dialogue?
Well, first of all, we demand that the national dialogue has to reflect the South African voices, particularly the working class and those that have been marginalized for too long, that it becomes a people-centered national dialogue that aims to listen to the voices that haven't been listened for the very past years, but that it shouldn't be and it must not be in any way hijacked by government and the political elites that have brought us to the crisis that has compelled the nation to rethink our future. So we just wanted to make sure that the voices of the people are heard, and that government does not interfere with the process. It allows ordinary men and women of South Africa to have their say.
You speak about the working class and ordinary men and women's voices being heard. How do you then view the composition of participants in this national dialogue? Do you feel that the voices of informal settlement residents are represented in these discussions?
Now that Abahlali baseMjondolo are part of this process, but I must make it clear that Abahlali have just sent us as delegates here as we speak. The majority are outside. We are accountable to them, so we will be driven and directed by their needs. So far we can safely say that hence we are here, hence we've been invited. It means somehow Abahlali is being recognized, but there's still a long road ahead to make sure that our voices, we are not just here to stamp, to rubber stamp and endorse what gets imposed on us. So we were watching the unfolding of the process very closely so that we don't find ourselves betraying our people twice.
Your statement also describes this national dialogue as reflecting a government that has poor political will and no solutions. So can you elaborate on what specific actions or lack thereof have led to Abahlali baseMjondolo to this particular assessment?
It is precisely that for far too long, the government has never had any political will. We did not exist. We have been governed with violence. Nobody wanted to engage with us. Now that the government has finally accepted its failure and it now wants to engage. Now, this is a clear indication of the admission of failure. And we believe that South Africans have made a big mistake back in 1994, that we've left, of course, politics to the hands of the politicians. And it's high time that South Africans reclaim their country. And we've said for a very long time that our future cannot be left in fewer hands, particularly the political elites that have indicated that they have no political will. I think we are at this stage because somehow government accepts that it has failed and therefore it requires us. So it is quite disturbing that we are invited just to deal with the damage control, which was deliberately made. I think all of us knew where the country was heading. It is unfortunately that we now have to deal with the crisis, something that South Africans have been speaking and trying to give a direction to the political elites who are not prepared to listen. We are not too sure, even if at this stage they are really prepared to listen, especially that we are heading to the local government elections. We are watching that very carefully that we don't become abused in order to make the ground fertile for them to come and lie again.
Let's expand a bit more on government's admission of their failure. Now, how have they failed informal settlement residents? What would a functioning parliament look like from your perspective?
Well, first of all, it is a disgrace. It is shameful for the government and general South African to accept poverty and to accept that people should be living in these squalors conditions. It should not be normalized. Why has it become normal? So that's the disgrace that we have normalized as a country. So under normal circumstances, I think every government will try and uplift those who were marginalized. We know the history of this country, so we cannot come here and pretend that we don't know how we have come to the socio-economic conditions that led people to be homeless, that has led to people to be underdeveloped in our township, in our rural areas, also in the informal settlements. It cannot be business as usual. So we are hoping that from now we will go back to our senses. We would struggle collectively to make sure that dignity centers, especially those who have been marginalized for too long. So the first thing to do, obviously, is the immediate agreement, which I don't think there's a debate, that land has to be restored back to its rightful owners. And those who are occupying lands, particularly the informal settlements, must be given security of tenure. And that land in which they occupy should then be transferred to them, and they live in peace and harmony. But there must be an immediate moratorium to all evictions that continue to terrorize our communities as if we are second class in this country, as if we are made favor for us to exist. It is high time that we reclaim our rightful place in our society and ascribe to the South Africa that we want, the South Africa that cares for the most vulnerable sectors of its society, starting with the worst off.
So, Sbu, speaking about those who are worst off in the current socio-economic situation in South Africa, President Ramaphosa spoke about launching 1 million conversations, as he put it, and mentions meeting in homes and community halls. But now for residents of informal settlements who lack basic infrastructure, where and how should these dialogues actually take place to be genuinely accessible?
Well, Abahlali have existed for the past 20 years. We have already established our own safe platforms in which we dialogue. So we are going to be leading that call. We are going to be identifying and showing them where communities of informal settlement live. We are used to holding our meetings under the trees. We are used to hold our meetings under the stars and the sky without any shelter. It will be no difference, because that shows exactly where government should start its really transformative at least a moment of delivering to those that are worse off. So we have platforms which we have created ourselves, and we are going to use what we have so that this moment cannot just go away without us taking advantage of the moment. We are just hoping that, as many people have said, it is not just another talk shop. We will be putting our systems in place to make sure that whatever we say gets recorded and is taken to the highest level where change needs to take place.
Right.
And that change has to reflect the ground that has for a very long time been marginalized.
Now, Spoo, what role should the Minister of Human Settlements play in these conversations, particularly given the ongoing housing crisis and forced removals that Abahlali, baseMjondolo, have been fighting, as you've rightfully indicated?
Well, first of all, the Minister of Human Settlement, rather, should call a nationwide moratorium to evictions in order for us to have a clean and genuine conversation so that people can participate without threats of being evicted, because some are facing imminent evictions as we speak. So we expect the minister to announce the national moratorium to all evictions, which would then allow people in the informal settlement to settle and be able to apply their minds in the rebuilding and reimagining South Africa. So if we were to begin this conversation while people are threatened, while municipalities and private landowners have taken us to court, that conversation from the onset, it will be unfair, that it will compel Abahlali not to see a need to proceed because we are already in the fight in courts and in streets. If this conversation was to save the most vulnerable people in our informal settlement, it should then move away from attacking them while pretending that everything is normal.